Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to the woman who's been crying in silence, the one who smiles in public but breaks down in the dark. You lost everything, and you feel like that's the end of the story. But I came to tell you, this is not the end. Sometimes God allows what he hates to accomplish what he loves. Sometimes he takes everything to give you something that can't be taken. It may be what you thought was punishment, was protection. That man walked out, that job disappeared, that dream crashed, it didn't break you. It revealed you thought it ended when they left. But baby girl, you were just getting started. Sometimes God has to strip us down to build us up. Sometimes he has to empty our hands so he can fill them with something greater. You still breathing? Then you still fighting. And if you're still fighting, then you're not finished. God doesn't create without purpose, and he doesn't waste pain. So if you feel like you've lost everything, remember, the ashes are where God writes the best stories. I know it hurts. I know the nights are long, but I need you to stand up in the fire and say, if this is not how my story ends, they counted you out, but God counted you in. They saw the fall, but God sees the future. You're not broken, you're becoming. This is the part of the movie where the music gets louder, where the hero gets up one last time, where the comeback starts. And you are that hero. So no, queen, this is not the end. This is your rise. Thy loss is not final. It's the beginning of transformation. At first, those words might sound like a cliche, a poetic way to soften the brutal sting of reality. But the truth behind them is deeper than comfort. It's about perspective. It's about understanding that what feels like the end is often just the breaking of the ground before something new can grow. Loss is painful. It strips you of your expectations, your plans, your comfort zones. It feels like the earth has opened up beneath your feet and everything familiar has vanished into the void. But what if that void is not a grave? What if it's the soil? What if that heartbreak, that failure, that disappointment is actually the place where transformation begins? Most people fear loss because it disrupts everything they thought they needed to survive. A lost relationship, a lost job, a lost dream. Each one tears away a piece of what you thought defined you. It forces you to ask hard questions. Who am I without this person, without this title, without this plan? Those questions feel heavy because they dismantle your identity. But underneath that collapse is a deeper opportunity. It's a moment when you're forced to dig into the core of who you are, stripped of what you thought gave you worth. And that's where true transformation begins. Because only when everything else falls away can you finally meet yourself. The real you, the one not defined by external things. Think about nature. A seed doesn't grow until it's buried. It has to be pushed into the darkness of the earth, covered completely, before it breaks open and begins to grow. That breaking, that's painful. That darkness, it's scary, but it's necessary. Without it, the seed would remain just a seed, full of potential, but never transformed. In the same way, loss buries us. It brings darkness. It brings uncertainty. But in that space, something within us begins to shift. We start letting go of old attachments. We start seeing what we truly value. We discover inner strength we never knew we had. People often think transformation comes through inspiration, but more often it comes through devastation. You lose something you thought you couldn't live without, and yet here you are, breathing, standing, trying, and maybe trembling, maybe grieving, but still moving. That's where transformation happens. In those moments when everything tells you to give up, but something inside whispers, try again. Loss tests you. It asks you to rebuild when the tools feel broken, but what you build after loss is different. It's wiser. It's more rooted in who you truly are. It's no longer built on illusion or fear. It's built on clarity and resilience. Some of the most powerful people you admire didn't become who they are in spite of their losses. They became who they are because of them. They found their voice after silence. They found their strength after weakness. They found their purpose after wandering. Transformation doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes wrapped in fire. And loss is that fire. It burns away what no longer serves you. It burns away the distractions. It burns away the masks. And what remains is raw but real, fragile but authentic, hurt but open. And yes, loss hurts. Let's not pretend otherwise. It will bring you to your knees. It will keep you up at night. It will have you questioning your worth, your purpose, your future. But that pain isn't pointless, but the passage is carving out a new shape within you, a shape that can hold deeper love, deeper strength, deeper wisdom. Loss teaches you empathy. because you can no longer look at others' pain with distant eyes. You've lived it. You know what it feels like. And in that way, your own transformation becomes a light for someone else who's just entering their darkness. When you lose something, it also means you had something worth caring about. And in that realization is the beginning of gratitude. You learn to cherish the present more deeply. You stop taking things for granted. You speak your love more freely. You hold your people closer. Loss has a way of stripping life of its fluff and revealing what really matters. It's like the forest after a fire. The unnecessary falls away, but the roots remain. And from those roots, something stronger can grow. Loss also gives birth to courage. When you face something you thought you couldn't survive and you're still standing, you realize how powerful you really are. The things that used to scare you don't have the same weight. You begin to take risks you never considered before. You speak with more honesty. You love with more depth. You live with more intention because you've already learned the hardest lesson. Nothing lasts forever, so you stop wasting time pretending it does. You live fully because you faced the edge and chosen to keep going. Now let's talk about identity. So often we tie our identity to what we have. Roles, relationships, achievements. When we lose those things, we feel like we've lost ourselves. But maybe that's the invitation to discover that you are not the roles you play or the things you achieve. You are not defined by your titles or your past. You are something deeper, something that loss can't take away. The you that still shows up even after the storm. The you that keeps going, no one is watching. That version of you, that's the real one. That's the one being revealed through the loss. Transformation through loss doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, it's messy. Some days you'll feel like you're moving forward. Other days you'll feel like you're drowning in grief or doubt. But even that mess is part of the process. Growth isn't linear, healing isn't pretty, but both are real. And the more you allow yourself to feel, to reflect, to rebuild, the more you become who you were always meant to be. Not in spite of the loss, but because of it. We often ask you, why me, in our moments of deepest pain. But what if the better question is, what now? What do I do with this pain? What do I learn from it? How do I turn it into purpose? That shift in mindset is the beginning of transformation. It doesn't erase the loss. It doesn't make it okay, but it gives it meaning, and sometimes that meaning becomes your mission. The truth is, you will never be the same after certain losses, but maybe you weren't meant to be. Maybe the old version of you couldn't hold what the new season requires. Maybe something had to end so that something greater could begin. Not louder, not more glamorous, but deeper, more honest, more you. So no, loss is not final. It feels like the end. But it's often the first chapter of something you never saw coming, something stronger, something truer, something born out of the ashes, not in spite of them. God doesn't waste pain. He uses it to rebuild you strong. That truth may not always be visible in the middle of suffering, but it becomes evident when you look back and realize that every scar tells a story of survival, of transformation, of unexpected grace. Pain often feels like a punishment, like something to avoid or escape. But in the hands of God, pain becomes a tool, not to destroy you, but to shape you. It becomes the very pressure that refines you, the fire that purifies you, and the storm that roots you deeper than comfort ever could. When you're in pain, it feels like the world has gone silent, like God is distant. You wonder why he allowed this hurt, this betrayal, this loss. You pray for rescue, for a miracle, for relief. But often God doesn't immediately remove the pain, not because he is cruel, but because he is doing something greater through it. Pain, as unwelcome as it is, opens the door to surrender. When everything else is stripped away, you're left with nothing but God. And in that space, you find he is enough. He becomes more than a Sunday thought or a distant hope. He becomes real, close, and necessary. There are things you can only learn through brokenness. You don't find compassion without feeling crushed. You don't learn strength without first feeling weak. You don't discover grace until you fail deeply and publicly. Pain is the classroom where the deepest lessons are taught. It's the pressure that pushes you to grow. And God, in his mercy, does not let that pain be meaningless. He collects every tear, every sleepless night, every unanswered question. He sees what others overlook. What you thought disqualified you is exactly what he uses to qualify you for more purpose, more empathy, more maturity. The idea that pain is wasted is a lie from hopelessness. But God operates with intention. Nothing in your life is accidental. Not the heartbreak, not the setback, not even the betrayal. He uses it all. He takes the shattered pieces and creates something more beautiful than what existed before the breaking. Think about a mosaic. It's made of broken fragments, jagged edges, shattered remains. But in the hands of an artist, those pieces become a masterpiece. Your pain is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of something only God can build, and he builds it stronger. We often ask God to take the pain away. But what if the pain is what he's using to take you to the next level? Pain has a way of burning off pride, distractions, and false identities. It reveals what's real and what's worth keeping. It forces you to look inward and upward. And in that place of humility, God begins his real work. He begins to rebuild not your old life, but a new one with stronger foundations, deeper roots, and greater impact. Pain connects you with others. You become a bridge for someone else when you've walked through fire. You speak not from theory, but from testimony. You can say, I know how that feels, and mean it. Your wounds become entry points for someone else's healing. Your story becomes the medicine someone else needs. That's how God multiplies the value of pain, not just for your growth, but for the healing of others. What you survive becomes a blueprint for someone else's breakthrough. Sometimes we think strength means never breaking, never crying, never feeling lost. But in God's economy, strength often looks like brokenness surrendered. It looks like tears turned into prayers. It looks like falling apart and then getting back up with his help. God isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for people who will let him rebuild them. He's not impressed with your image. He wants your truth, your raw, honest, messy truth. And when you bring that to him, he doesn't reject it. He redeems it. Even Jesus wasn't exempt from pain. The cross wasn't just about sacrifice. It was about transformation. Pain was part of the process of resurrection. And if the Son of God had to endure the cross before the crown, then maybe our suffering also holds a sacred purpose. Maybe your cross is the path to your calling. Maybe your crushing is what will release your anointing. Olive oil doesn't come without pressing. Diamonds don't form without pressure. Gold isn't purified without fire. So if you're feeling pressed, crushed, or broken, maybe it's not the end. Maybe it's preparation. You don't have to like the pain. You don't have to pretend it's easy. But you can trust that it's being used. God is the ultimate recycler. He turns pain into purpose, loss into learning, ashes into beauty. He doesn't waste one moment. Every sleepless night, every gut-wrenching prayer, every moment you felt unseen, it's all being gathered into a greater story, a story not of defeat, but of redemption. Of a woman, a man who walked through the fire and came out not smelling like smoke, but shining like gold. Sometimes you won't see the full picture while you're still in it. You'll feel like you're drowning. You'll feel forgotten. But hindsight will show you that God was working in the dark. He was healing in hidden places. He was orchestrating divine connection, rearranging the pieces of your life to align with a higher plan. And when you finally look back, you'll realize the pain didn't destroy you. It remade you. You'll become grateful for the fire, not because it was fun, but because it forged something in you that comfort never could. Endurance, compassion, wisdom, vision, a deeper relationship with God, and a kind of strength that doesn't boast. It just quietly stands tall in any storm. That's the strength God builds in pain. The kind that doesn't bend with every wind. The kind that holds others up when they're falling apart. The kind that leads not with ego, but with empathy. We often wish our lives were smoother, cleaner, easier, but we don't grow in comfort. We grow in resistance, in challenge, in seasons where everything feels like it's falling apart. But God lets some things fall apart so that better things can fall into place. He allows some doors to close so that we'll walk through the ones we were made for. He allows certain people to leave so that we'll finally make room for those meant to walk with us into the next season. What the enemy meant for harm, God uses for good. That's not just a Bible verse, it's a pattern, a promise, a truth that stood the test of time. You may not have chosen the pain, but you get to choose the response. Will you let it define you or refine you? Will you let it break you or build you? In God's hands, pain becomes the raw material of miracles. Not overnight, not without struggle, but always with purpose. God doesn't promise a life without pain, but he does promise that the pain won't be wasted. He does promise that you won't walk through it alone. And he promises that what you come out with will be worth what you went through. The strongest structures are built after demolition. The tallest trees grow from the deepest roots. And the most powerful testimonies come from the most painful trials. ChatGPT said, "You are not forgotten. Your name is still in the plan." There's a quiet kind of ache that creeps into your soul when life leaves you waiting. When you've prayed, believed, worked, trusted, and nothing changes, you begin to wonder if you've been overlooked, if somehow heaven forgot to add your name to the list of those who will be answered, blessed, remembered. That feeling is heavy. It's not just disappointment, it's the sting of invisibility. You see others rise, you watch their stories unfold. Meanwhile, yours feels stuck in pause, or worse, rewind. But even in that silence, in that space between the promise and the fulfillment, the truth still holds. You are not forgotten. God doesn't have amnesia. He doesn't misplace purpose or overlook potential. His plans don't expire. He hasn't lost your file in a divine system glitch. When it feels like he's quiet, it's not because he's absent. It's because he's working behind the curtain, writing chapters that haven't yet reached your stage. What feels like a delay to you is often divine timing in motion. You may not see movement, but something is always happening in the unseen. Just because you haven't received the answer doesn't mean your name isn't in the plan. You're still part of the story. You're still on the path. Even if the road feels unfamiliar, it's easy to question your worth when you feel overlooked. You start comparing your journey to others. You scroll past their celebrations and wonder why yours hasn't come. You hear of doors opening, miracles happening, breakthroughs arriving, and you ask, when will it be my turn? That question isn't selfish, it's human. But even when your turn feels far away, it hasn't been erased. Just because it hasn't come yet doesn't mean it's not coming. You are not waiting in vain. You are being prepared. And in that preparation, God is doing a work in you that's just as important as the blessing you're waiting for. The silence isn't punishment, it's often protection. Sometimes God delays certain things because he knows what you can't yet see. He knows the weight that comes with the blessing. He knows the strength you'll need to carry what's next. And so he waits, not to withhold, but to ensure that when the door opens, you'll be ready to walk through it. You're not forgotten, you're being formed. You're not invisible, you're being invested in. You may feel behind, but you're right on schedule with a plan far bigger than your own. God's timing doesn't follow human clocks. His ways are higher, his thoughts are deeper. And while it may seem like others are ahead of you, you're not running the same race. Your story has a different route, a different rhythm. What looks like delay to the world is actually precision from heaven. And your name? It's not lost. It's written in grades, tattooed on the palms of his hands. That's not poetic language. It's a promise, a reminder that you are seen, known, and remembered in the deepest, most personal way. There are people in Scripture who waited for years, even decades, before the promise was fulfilled. Abraham waited for a son. Joseph waited in a prison. David waited to be crowned king. Each of them at some point must have wondered if they were forgotten, but their names were always in the plan. And when the time was right, not only did the promise come, it came bigger than they imagined. You're in that same lineage. You're in that same divine pattern. Just because the page is quiet doesn't mean the story isn't advancing. Sometimes the most important parts of the story are the ones being written in silence. Your pain is not unseen. Your prayers haven't disappeared. Your sacrifices haven't gone unnoticed. Every act of obedience, every step of faith, every whisper to God, I trust you. It's all part of something larger. You are being woven into a masterpiece, and every thread has meaning. Even the dark ones, even the tangled ones, even the ones that don't seem to fit. God is not done. If you're still breathing, he's still building. If you still feel the ache, that means the promise still matters. And if it still matters, then it still lives. And if it still lives, then your name is still in the plan. Sometimes we base our worth on our productivity, our visibility, our applause. When none of those are present, we assume we don't matter. But you are more than what you produce, more than what people see, more than how quickly you rise. You are chosen, not randomly, not reluctantly, but intentionally. You were picked before the beginning of time for this specific life, this specific impact. That doesn't mean the road will be smooth, but it does mean it will be meaningful. And in the moments when you feel left behind, remind yourself, nothing of value is ever rushed. God knows how to bring you forward at the right time. He knows how to open doors that no man can shut. He knows how to elevate you in a moment that makes all the waiting worth it. But he also knows what you need to become before you get there. He's not just writing a story for you. He's developing a character in you. That character is patience, resilience, compassion, humility. These aren't detours from the plan, they are the plan. Because what good is a platform without character? What good is a gift without the grace to carry it? So while you're waiting, you're not wasting time. You're building capacity. It's okay to feel weary, to feel like giving up, to wonder if your time will ever come. But don't confuse silence with absence. Don't mistake waiting for abandonment. Even when you don't feel it, he's there. Even when nothing makes sense, he's working. And even when it feels like no one sees you, he does. You are not forgotten. He remembers your voice. He sees your tears. He hears the questions you don't say out loud. And even now, even in this moment, he is closer than you realize. When God moves, he often moves suddenly. But that sudden move is almost always preceded by a long season of waiting. Preparation often looks like obscurity. Growth often happens in hidden places. And calling often requires crushing. But the crushing doesn't mean you're discarded. It means you're being refined. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Wine comes from pressing the olive. The process may hurt, but the result is precious. And your life is producing something eternal. You are not forgotten. Heaven has not moved on without you. The plan hasn't changed. The timeline hasn't been canceled. You may not feel significant right now, but significance is not a feeling. It's a truth. And the truth is, God finishes what he starts. He doesn't abandon his projects halfway through. He doesn't drop you when it gets hard. He doesn't overlook the ones who feel least qualified. In fact, those are often the ones he uses most powerfully. The world may have skipped past you. People may have forgotten you. Even your own heart may doubt your place, but God has not. Your name is written in his story. Your life is stamped with purpose. And even when it feels like the dream is fading, he is still the author. And he hasn't lifted his pen. Faith is your fuel. Keep walking, even if you don't see the path. That sentence holds more weight than most realize, because the journey of faith is often walked in the dark. It's trusting without a map, moving without a clear destination, believing without visible evidence. Faith isn't about walking when everything is lit up and obvious. It's about taking the next step when all you have is a whisper in your soul that says, keep going. You may not know exactly where you're headed, but you know who called you. And that has to be enough. There are seasons in life when the path disappears right under your feet. Doors close, relationships, dreams get delayed, and nothing around you makes sense. It's in these moments where logic says stop, but faith says step. You may look ahead and see nothing but fog, but something in you refuses to quit. That's faith. That's the fuel that keeps your soul burning when everything external goes cold. Faith doesn't need full visibility to move. It needs full trust in the one who sees what you can't. When you trust that God is leading, even when the road disappears, that's when faith becomes alive. Faith isn't just belief, it's action. It's waking up each morning and choosing to move forward, even when the last thing you want to do is try again. It's applying for the job, even after 10 rejections. It's loving again after heartbreak. It's starting the business, writing the book, preaching the message, not because you see the end result, but because you trust the one who does. The path may not look clear, but faith doesn't demand clarity. It demands obedience. And obedience, even when it doesn't make sense, is often the birthplace of miracles. The truth is, many people wait until everything is just right before they move. But if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll wait forever. Faith dares to move in imperfection. It's not about having everything together. It's about saying yes to the next step. God often doesn't reveal step 2 until you take step 1. That's how he builds trust. That's how he shapes you. Not in the comfort of certainty, but in the discomfort of not knowing and still saying yes. It's in those steps of obedience that your faith muscles grow stronger. Think of Abraham. God told him to go to a land he would show him, but didn't tell him where. Think of Noah building an ark when rain had never fallen. Think of Peter stepping out of a boat onto water that could not support him, except that Jesus said to come. None of them saw the full path. All of them moved anyway. That's what faith looks like. It's messy, it's uncertain, it's risky, but it's also powerful, and God always honors it. There's something deeply personal about walking by faith. It strips away distraction. It eliminates pretense. When you don't know what's next, you start listening more closely. You lean in. You pray deeper. You look for the signs you would have otherwise missed. Faith awakens your spirit to the subtle moves of God. You begin to hear his voice not just in loud miracles, but in quiet nudges. A scripture that speaks, a conversation that confirms, a peace that defies understanding. These are the breadcrumbs God leaves on the path, not the whole picture, but just enough to keep you moving. Faith will test you. It will stretch you. It will make you look crazy sometimes. Others may not understand your decisions. They may wonder why you keep going when there's no logical reason to, but faith isn't built on logic. It's built on trust. It's built on trust. It's built on knowing that God has never failed you before and won't start now. And that even if the outcome doesn't look like what you expected, the journey still has value. Faith transforms you even if the situation doesn't change right away. There'll be days when you feel like quitting, when doubt screams louder than truth, when fear whispers that maybe you're wasting your time. That's when faith becomes your anchor. You remind yourself of what God has already done. You look back at the Red Seas he's parted, the closed doors he's used for redirection, the mountains he's moved before. You may not see the full path, but you've seen his fingerprints in your past. And that becomes enough for the next step. Faith also requires patience. We live in a world that celebrates instant results, but the kingdom of God is often a slow work. Seeds take time to grow. Foundations take time to build. Miracles sometimes come on a delay, but a delay is not a denial. Just because you don't see fruit yet doesn't mean the tree isn't growing roots. Some of the most important work happens underground, where no one sees. Don't dig up what you planted just because it hasn't sprouted on your timeline. Faith says, it's coming, even when nothing has changed. When you walk by faith, you start seeing detours differently. What once felt like rejection now feels like protection. What once felt like a loss now looks like preparation. Faith reframes everything. It doesn't eliminate hardship, but it gives it purpose. You may walk through valleys, but faith tells you the valley is not your home. It's just part of the route. You may face storms, but faith reminds you the boat won't sink if Jesus is in it. You may feel alone, but faith declares that God is closer than your breath. Sometimes faith means walking slow. Other times it means leaping. But whether you're crawling, limping, or running, the important thing is that you're still moving. Don't measure your progress by pace. Measure it by obedience. Some days just getting out of bed and choosing hope is an act of faith. Some days your faith may feel small, but even mustard seed faith can move mountains. It's not about the size of your belief. It's about the size of the one you believe in. Walking by faith isn't about pretending everything's okay. It's about believing that God is still in control, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. It's about being honest with your fears, but choosing to trust anyway. Faith doesn't deny reality. It just chooses to believe that God's reality is greater. It's not blind optimism. It's not wishful thinking. It's grounded, gritty trust that says, even here, even now, I still believe. Keep walking, even if the path is invisible. Keep praying, even if heaven seems quiet. Keep trusting, even if your heart feels tired. Faith is your fuel, not the applause of people, not the clarity of the plan, not the absence of struggle. Just faith, that deep inner knowing that God is still good, still present, still working, still writing your story. And the path, it may not be visible yet, but one step at a time, guided by faith, you'll find that God was leading you all along. In the end, the message is clear. Even when life feels uncertain, when the path disappears and your strength is stretched, then faith is the fuel that keeps you moving. It's not about having all the answers, seeing every step, or feeling strong every day. It's about choosing to walk forward with trust in the one who does see, who never forgets, and who is always ahead of you, preparing the way. You are not forgotten. Your name is still in the plan. And even when the journey feels dark, you are being led by a faithful God who works in the unseen. So keep walking, not because you have it all figured out, but because faith tells you that the story isn't over and the best is still to come.